Welcome to the Productivity Pro podcast. I'm your host, Waneka Tessie, here to help you unlock your potential, maximize your time, and take intentional steps towards your best self. Whether you're a busy professional, an entrepreneur, or someone striving to achieve more balance and fulfillment, this podcast is your guide to actionable insights and inspiring conversations. New episode drops on the first and last Tuesdays of each month, so stay tuned and let's make productivity personal. Oh my goodness, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Living the Life podcast. I'm saying oh my goodness and being dramatical because it's been a while. I have missed being on the podcast. I have missed just life when I had the inception of, okay, I do want to create a productivity podcast, and then getting it to this point where it is, and then just like having these wonderful guests and really putting effort into the podcast. Then life got busy. I got sick, and the sick was always stress induced or like some form of COVID. And it just got to where it was like I was a different, when you're a shell of yourself and you don't quite recognize who you are. That's what I've been living for the past 2 years. And my friends and my enemies, I am so excited to be back on this podcast because I have a lot of great things. Life is not easy. I haven't won millions. Things are not easier, but things are incredible. That's what I'll say. Things are incredible because I ended up purchasing my first house in Arizona during COVID. And then it was more of like, I wanted to, see what it was like to put my hand in like taking a house, kind of like renovating it and then selling it. So that worked out really well. I was fortunate. I sold it when the market was really good for selling homes, and it did well. And then I said, okay, I'm going to move away from this state. But then I did a move and bought a townhouse. And then this townhouse, I'm like, I'm not going to be here more than 2 years, 2 years max. I don't have to pay the taxes. And then I'm out. I'll dip. That was the plan. That was the radical plan that did not take shape because I ended up falling in love with my home. When you finally say, you know what, it feels like home. Like it's not. You might see like on content media websites, television, you see these like grandiose and like extravagant homes and things. And then you're like, I want that. I want all those things. And in your head, you're like, okay, if I'm productive and I chase my goals and I accomplish my goals, I could get things that are grander and grander and grander. So I say all this thing because this productivity podcast is going to be short and sweet. To be productive doesn't always mean chasing the biggest and the latest. I'm going to say this again. To be productive doesn't mean you're chasing the latest and the greatest. Because when you get into that field of, okay, my lane is to keep chasing, keep pursuing, keep doing all the things, a lot of things are going to happen to you. You're either going to have your health suffer. And if it's not your internal health, you're going to not like how you feel because you're always on the go. You're always stressed. Our body keeps a score and you're always stressed. There's always something that your body is like, this is not us. This is not us. So that's one thing that can happen. Another thing is you become this very self-isolated individual. And some people think self-isolated is I'm by myself. You could be with people and be completely alone, completely isolated because they don't grasp the concept of what it takes to have your mind operate the way it does. And at the same time, they really can help you get to whatever goal it is you're trying to chase or pursue. So that's the second thing that can happen. A third thing that can happen is you just hate life. Let's be frank. You just hate life. When it seems like you're constantly pursuing. Now, keep in mind, people who are super wealthy and they're constantly pursuing, they can do those things because they have enough money to chase dreams. And while you're sitting there thinking, oh, I want to be a dream chaser, if you don't have that funding from the moment your ancestor generationally allowed you to have wealth that lets you do whatever random things you want to pursue, it's going to be stressful and it's going to mean you're going to lose a lot of things. Now, the wealthy people, they can do all that. Someone wants a yacht, they could buy. They have all that. They don't have to chase, I think we have to have this conversation where we're like, wealthy people don't have to chase things. They don't have to pursue goals. They already have the funds to say, okay, I want to have a business. They could do that. I want to be a huge content creator. They can do that. They don't have to chase goals. So please don't put yourself in that arena unless you do have the funds like those people in that arena. Then yeah, by all means, my friends, as a productivity podcast host, I would always encourage you to do the things that are most productive and wise for your mind, your brain, your heart, everything. When I started this podcast in 2020, it was spawned on by my love of car talk. That was like one of my first and favorite podcast episode that I listened to while I was in college. Is on syndication, so you can still listen to it. I think one of the hosts has passed on, but it was one of the ones I'm like, oh, I'm learning something. I'm engaged. There's always something new. And then I would look at other podcasts that were kind of similar, like you were Away with Words was another one of my favorite. It was teaching you something new. It was very, very insightful. It was very entertaining. And some people might think entertaining is like salacious news. For me, entertaining is, I feel like it makes me feel like, oh, thank you for giving me this. To me, that's entertaining. And then wait, don't tell me. I love those type of podcast shows. And then I said, okay, one day, I know it's not always bravery. Sometimes when I do things, people are like, oh, you're so brave. I want to be. Sometimes it's not really bravery. It's more of like, if I do it, if it doesn't work out, then okay, it didn't work out. But if I don't do it, then I would never know what it's like to try in my imperfect being, in the little funds that I make. I would never know what it's like to do those things if I don't try, right? So might as well try and fail and say I've done it, right? And then move on with my life. No harm, no foul, right? To me, that's why I decided to launch this podcast in 2020. And I had a small vision and it wasn't a big dream. And I said, okay, I wonder how long a podcast like this would be able to sustain itself. And at first it was guest heavy, lots of guests. I will always have guests. And I wasn't really sharing anything impactful in a sense on my perspective, because I'm so afraid to really tell people the person that I am, because then you have to face a lot of things that went really well in your childhood and really horribly. Like, you just have to face those things. And then those who weren't there for you, and how you might not have shown up for people because you were so deprived of what it means to be there for people. It's just, that's why there was always this like fear of, if I launch a productivity podcast, what should that look like? Then it's like, it becomes too dry when you're like, let's talk about money. Let's talk about finance. And you know what? Those things are great if you know the person that you're speaking to, it's equally invested in your emotional connection. And I didn't feel that the first few seasons of the podcast. Why I relaunched it with a new name, the Productivity Pro, to just involve a lot of things that are specific to productivity. Doesn't necessarily have to mean chasing goals to build a business or a career, but productivity is like things that get you to feel like you're being productive, right? So such as if you want to be more mindful about your office space. Oh, look at this wonderful office space. I finally said in my head, okay, you love this home, so you're going to stay a while. So why don't you create an actual office space so you can stop wasting time and say, the reason I couldn't do the episode is I don't have a space to do it, or I don't have the mic to do it. You will never have everything to do anything if we just keep listing all the ways we don't have something. So instead of me creating all these excuses why I couldn't do this podcast, I decided, you know what? When I relaunch, I'm going to take as long as it takes before I get to where I feel my authentic voice can really shine. And I'm excited because a lot of things have not worked out well for the past 2 years. And you're probably thinking, shouldn't you be sad that a lot of things didn't work out? No, my initial goal is sell my home after 2 years. So I was like, I want to sell this. The market starts dipping. Everything starts at wars, chaos. everything. I get sick again, and it's always stress. It's always stress related. And then I get COVID, then I get the flu. It's like then I just get to where I loved what I was doing. I didn't love where I was doing it. And I think things have to go really horribly at some point, right? For you to force yourself to reimagine what your life should be, right? A lot of things might go wrong. And if you still come out of a lot of things going wrong with your health and your mental and emotional well-being, still at a decent level of stability, then you actually get to reimagine what is your next step, right? I always feel if you didn't die, it's an opportunity to reimagine, okay? So for me, reimagining the podcast to be a Productivity Pro podcast, to be more conversationally centered to me having the conversation with my listeners and waiting till I get guests that speak on that, like that they're freely going to share who they are, own up to their mistakes. It's not a gimmicky. It doesn't sound like they're trying to like sell you on some points that may not even work. I decided I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait till that happens, and I'm going to ride the wave of things just going left and right. When I say nothing I've planned this year has worked, nothing, and last year, nothing I've said, nothing has worked. I mean, can you imagine? I went back to be an educator, and I'm not even sure I love that. And that's money you don't have that you've put into things that you thought, okay, maybe this is a good opportunity. And then I said to myself, do I not love it, or do I not love how I'm doing it currently? And then it gives you an opportunity to reimagine what could it be like if you did it the way that makes sense to you? What could it be like if you did it in an environment that made absolute sense to you? Like that is what having unsuccessful years, months, days, weeks, whatever, however long the dry spell happens, they have to happen so that you can reimagine. They have to happen so that you can reimagine. And this is my friends and my audience and enemies, whoever you are, thank you for listening still. Understand at the end of it, someone who is productive doesn't necessarily have to be bending over backwards and killing themselves to get there. Sometimes being productive is just sitting down and assessing that a lot of things have gone wrong and there is nothing you can do about it until you continue to ride the wave out of whatever's happening. And until you can tell yourself it's okay to just ride that wave until I figure out what this reimagined life will be like, it's gonna suck. As an honest productivity podcast host, I want you to know it's gonna suck. There are gonna be days you can't even cry because it's like you don't even have the strength to cry about whatever is going on. And it's gonna suck. That's okay. So I thank you for listening. Trust me, you will be getting an episode every week. And it's gonna happen. No more excuses. Look at this office. I took hours arranging everything in my house so that I could have a space dedicated to my work, my online teaching, my podcast, and content creating. Because as I'm now having to reimagine what this year could look like, it doesn't mean it's going to be wonderful. It just means it's a reimagined year. And so being part of the idea of productivity has to involve knowing that things are just going to suck and it's okay to ride that wave. And guess who's going to ride that wave with you? Yours truly, Waneka Tessie. All right. I thank you all for being on the podcast today and listening. Please share, subscribe, rate. Tell me how you liked it. Tell me how you like the new Productivity Pro name. Also, if you want to be a guest on the podcast, you got things to share, please also let me know. You can reach me on Instagram and TikTok at the Productive Fit Chat. That is it. It's also on the link on the show notes. And please take care of your inner being. Take care of your overall person. And let's be productive together until next time. See you on the podcast.